They called him guilty. She called him innocent. And what happened next? No one in that courtroom saw it coming. When defense attorney Richard Holloway calmly stood up and withdrew from the case, silence fell like a storm over the courtroom. Logan Carter, once hailed as the people's billionaire for creating an app that helped thousands during the pandemic, now sat handcuffed and alone, abandoned not just by his lawyer, but by public opinion. Then came a voice no one expected. "I can defend him," said a little girl with beaded braids and oversized shoes. 8-year-old Layla Thompson, barely tall enough to see over the proppant wooden bench, stood up with trembling courage. The judge, expecting to dismiss her, instead paused. And in that pause, history began to shift. Layla spoke not just with emotion, but with facts. She had read everything, every article, every timeline. And she believed in Logan more than anyone else in that room. Because 2 years earlier, Logan had given her late brother a chance through a mentorship program. He didn't just offer Wi-Fi and tablets, he offered hope. And now, when everyone had turned their backs, Layla refused to be silent. Her unexpected speech shook the courtroom. For the first time, someone wasn't defending money or power, they were defending truth. What followed wasn't just a legal battle, it was a fight for dignity, loyalty, and the belief that even the smallest voice can be the loudest echo in a world gone deaf. And that little voice, it had just begun to roar. It started with silence. A powerful, heavy silence in a courtroom packed with reporters, cameras, and curious eyes. Logan Carter, the 26-year-old tech billionaire once celebrated on the cover of Forbes, sat stunned at the defense table, his wrists bound in cold steel, watching his lawyer walk out on him. "I'm withdrawing from representation, Your Honor," effective immediately. The words from attorney Richard Holloway echoed like thunder through the courtroom. Gasps followed. Some stood in disbelief, others reached for their phones to live-tweet the foreigns. Moment. But in the third row, unnoticed and unmoved, sat an 8-year-old girl in a borrowed dress and braids, her small frame holding a notebook clutched tight to her chest. Her name was Layla Thompson, and in just a few moments, she would do something that would stop time. "I can defend him," she said. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a stunt. It was a truth burning in her chest that had to be spoken. People laughed at first. A child? In a felony trial? But Judge Reiner didn't dismiss her right away. Instead, he asked why. And her answer silenced every whisper. "Because he saved my brother's life." 2 years earlier, Layla's brother, Marcus, had joined a tech mentorship program funded by Logan Carter's company, Bridgepoint. They lived in East St. Louis, where opportunity was a stranger. But Logan's app gave Marcus a laptop, a connection to hope, and a dream. To work in tech and escape the cycle that swallowed so many boys on their block. Marcus didn't make it. He was shot outside a convenience store before finishing the program, but Layla never forgot who gave him a fighting chance. So when Logan Carter was accused of attempted murder, of beating a corporate rival nearly to death in a warehouse, Layla didn't believe it for a second. The media did. Investors did. Even his own lawyer eventually did. But Layla didn't. She skipped school, walked herself to the courthouse, and waited patiently. She had read every article, printed court documents at the library, memorized dates, flight times, everything she could understand. And when she saw Logan's lawyer quit, something inside her snapped. If no one else would fight for him, she would. With shaky hands but unwavering purpose, she addressed the court. "He couldn't have done it," she said. "Everyone says he was in St. Louis that night, but his flight didn't land until after midnight. And that warehouse is hours from the airport." People leaned in. Logan himself turned toward her. For the first time in days, someone saw him, not as a criminal, not as a headline, but as a human being. Layla continued, flipping pages in her notebook. Victor Hale, the man who got hurt, was confessing. about to lose a huge deal to Mr. Carter. But if Mr. Carter goes to jail, Hale gets the contract back. Isn't that a reason to lie? The courtroom buzzed. The prosecutor tried to object, but the judge let her finish. It wasn't just about facts. It was about motive, about logic, and above all about heart. But Layla's moment didn't end there. Behind the scenes, Logan received a surprise visit from a ghost of his past, Trevor Maddox, his former co-founder. They hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since money and ego tore their friendship apart. And in a cruel twist, it turned out Trevor was behind it all. Trevor had framed Logan cloning his phone, rerouting his rental car, planting money, working with Hale, all for revenge. And that night, Trevor told Logan the truth, smug and unrepentant. I wanted you to fall, and I made sure you would. But what Trevor hadn't planned for was a little girl with braids, a notebook, and a stubborn belief in the truth. Layla found Trevor's name in an old company record. Then she found proof that Trevor had purchased a plane ticket to St. Louis on the same day Hale was attacked. She brought it straight to the courtroom the next morning. Judge Reiner ordered a recess and an immediate investigation. Within hours, everything changed. Logan Carter was released on bond. Trevor Maddox was arrested within a week. The truth finally surfaced. Logan had been framed, and a child's voice cracked the case. Outside the courthouse, Layla became an overnight sensation. 8-year-old girl defends tech. Billionaire blazed across every news station. But to Layla, it was never about fame. It was about Marcus. About finishing the fight her brother never got to see. She didn't care about headlines. She cared about justice. A week later, Logan sat at the small kitchen table in Layla's apartment, sharing fried chicken with her and her grandmother. No cameras, no press. Just 3 people brought together by pain, truth, and something stronger than both hope. You'd make a heck of a lawyer one day, Logan said, smiling. Layla grinned. Good. Because next time you get into trouble, I'm charging you. They laughed. It wasn't the laugh of victory. It was the laugh of survival, of release, of being heard. And as the laughter faded into quiet, Logan asked her something he'd been thinking for days. Why didn't you give up? When everyone said I was guilty, Layla looked at him and gave the answer that would inspire millions. Because when the world calls you a liar, somebody's got to remember the truth. And sometimes that somebody is a kid. In a courtroom filled with tension and headlines, one moment redefined everything. A child's voice rising through the chaos. 8-year-old Layla Thompson, dressed in a hand-me-down dress and gripping a worn-out notebook, stood up and said the impossible. I can defend him. Everyone turned. Reporters froze mid-tweet. The judge raised an eyebrow. And Logan Carter, a 26-year-old billionaire once adored for his tech innovations, now sat stunned in handcuffs. He had just been abandoned by his attorney. The world believed he was guilty. But Layla didn't. To understand why that moment mattered, you have to understand what led her there. Logan Carter wasn't born into wealth. Raised by a single mother in Bakersfield, California, he built his future from a broken laptop salvaged from a neighbor's trash. By 19, he launched his first app. By 26, he had created Bridgepoint, a platform that connected underprivileged youth to scholarships, mentors, and opportunities. He was the poster child for the grit and genius, but in the court of public opinion, all that vanished overnight. 3 months before the trial, a warehouse in St. Louis went up in flames. Inside was Victor, Hale, Logan's bitter corporate rival, found beaten and barely alive. An eyewitness claimed to have seen Logan near the site. His phone had pinged near the city limits. A rental car linked to him was caught on traffic cam. Worst of all, a safe in Logan's office was found filled with untraceable cash. The headlines were brutal. Billionaire beats rival. Prodigy or predator. Sponsors pulled out. Stock plummeted. And when Logan said he wasn't even in St. Louis, that night, nobody cared. Nobody. Except Layla. Her older brother Marcus had once been part of Bridgepoint's youth mentorship program. Growing up in East St. Louis, they didn't have much, not even Wi-Fi. But Logan's program gave Marcus a tablet, a mentor, and most importantly, hope. He dreamed of coding his way out of the block. Tragically, Marcus was killed in a shooting outside a convenience store before he could finish the program. But to Layla, Logan was the only one who had ever seen Marcus as more than a statistic. When she learned Logan had been accused of attempted murder, she didn't see a criminal. She saw the man who gave her brother a chance at life, and she decided to fight. Layla skipped school, spent weeks in the library printing news articles, studying legal documents, tracing flight paths and timestamps. She may have been a child, but she was a determined one. And when Logan's lawyer walked out mid-trial declaring his client dishonest, Layla did what no adult dared. She stood up. Her voice trembled at first, but as she spoke, the courtroom leaned in. He wasn't in St. Louis when it happened, she said. His flight didn't land until past midnight, and the warehouse is hours away. She held up her notebook, flipping through pages of carefully documented research. Math is math, she added. He couldn't have been in both places. Layla continued with clarity beyond her years. She pointed out motive. Hale had more to gain from Logan's downfall than Logan had from attacking him. Hale's company was days away from losing a massive deal to Bridgepoint. But if Logan went to jail, the deal defaulted. Judge Reiner, who had initially given her just 1 minute, sat back in silence. The courtroom buzzed. The prosecutor tried to object, but was silenced, because what everyone knew, deep down, was that the little girl was making more sense than the professionals in the room. Behind closed doors, Logan faced another shock. His former business partner, Trevor Maddox, had come to visit. Once best friends and co-founders of Bridgepoint, they had parted to ways over ambition and resentment. Now Trevor leaned back in his chair, smug, and whispered the truth. You were supposed to fall, Logan, and I made sure you did. He had framed Logan, used cloned phone data, planted money, manipulated evidence, all to get revenge and make a deal with Victor Hale. Logan was stunned, gutted, and powerless. But Layla wasn't. That same night, at home in her cramped apartment, she recognized Trevor's name in an old Bridgepoint article. Something clicked. She dug through her notes and found proof of a recent flight Trevor took to St. Louis, the same day Hale was attacked. She circled it in red, then turned to her grandmother. Grandma, we have to go back tomorrow. I know who set him up. The next day in court, Layla interrupted again, this time with a printout of that flight, confirmation, and a record of Trevor's secret meetings with Hale's attorneys. The judge called for a recess and launched an immediate review. 2 hours later, the courtroom erupted. Judge Reiner ordered Logan's release and called for an investigation into Trevor Maddox. Logan was free. As the courtroom buzzed with energy and media flashes, Logan walked toward Layla, who stood on a bench to see over the crowd. He knelt down, eyes meeting hers, voice breaking. You saved me. She smiled through tears. You saved Marcus. I just returned the favor. That moment captured the world. But to Logan and Layla, it was personal. It was truth, reclaiming its voice. Later that week, Logan sat at the Thompsons' kitchen table, eating fried chicken and laughing, with Layla and her grandma. No cameras, no headlines, just family. You'd make a great lawyer, he said. Layla grinned. You better behave then. I don't work for free next time. And as they laughed, something beautiful settled in the air, something stronger than justice or revenge. It was belief, and that belief sparked by one child's voice had changed everything. The courtroom buzzed with confusion. Phones were out. Whispers flew through the aisles, and the cameras never stopped rolling. But amid the noise, something extraordinary had just happened. A child had shifted the entire course of a criminal trial. Her name was Layla Thompson, 8 years old, all heart and determination. And she had just stood up in front of a judge to defend a billionaire no one else believed in. But Layla wasn't chasing attention. She was chasing truth. And in doing so, she would uncover a betrayal so cold, so calculated, that it would shake the courtroom and the Sun country to its core. Logan Carter was once hailed as a hero of Silicon Valley, a tech prodigy who rose from nothing, launched Bridgepoint to help underserved youth, and became a billionaire before 25. During the pandemic, his platform provided thousands of students with tablets, internet, and mentoring programs when schools had shut down. That's how Layla's older brother, Marcus, had come to admire him. A 17-year-old with a passion for coding, Marcus had finally found purpose through Logan's program. It was more than just access to technology. It was the first time someone had told him he mattered. But Marcus's dreams were cut short when he was gunned down in a drive-by shooting near a corner store. Layla never blamed Logan. In fact, in the wake of Marcus's death, she saw Logan as the only adult who had ever tried to lift them out of hopelessness. So when the news broke that Logan had been arrested for attempted murder, accused of beating a rival named Victor Hale nearly to death in a warehouse, Layla couldn't accept it. The headlines were brutal. Logan's phone pinged near the warehouse. His rental car was spotted on traffic cams. Cash was found in his office safe. It all looked damning, but something didn't sit right with Layla. So she dug in. She skipped school, spent her afternoons in the local library, printing every article, every timeline. She checked flight records, company statements, and press releases. She made notes and drew connections. And when Logan's own lawyer walked out in court, claiming his client had been dishonest, Layla did the unthinkable. She stood up. "I can defend him," she said clearly. Judge Reiner was stunned. The crowd thought it was a joke. But Layla didn't waver. "He saved my brother's life. He didn't do this." The judge, instead of dismissing her outright, gave her 1 minute. And that minute became one of the most powerful moments the courtroom had ever seen. Layla presented travel. Records showing Logan's flight hadn't even landed until after the crime occurred. She pointed out how Hale's company stood to gain millions if Logan were imprisoned. She may have been a child, but her logic was clear. Her belief in Logan was unshakable. And that belief sparked a chain reaction. Later that night, Logan received an unexpected visit in jail from Trevor Maddox, his former best friend and the co-founder of Bridgepoint. They hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years, but as Trevor leaned back in the visitor's chair, smirking, Logan knew something was off. "You set me up," Logan said. Trevor smiled coldly. "You gave me nothing but scraps, Logan. So I found someone who saw my worth. Hale." It all made sense. Trevor had cloned Logan's SIM card, planted money in his office, arranged the rental car, and tipped off investigators. It was a perfect setup motivated by revenge and greed. But Trevor had made one mistake: underestimating Layla. That same night, Layla found Trevor's name in an old Bridgepoint article. She remembered seeing it before Marcus died. Now, something clicked. She cross-referenced it with recent data and found a flight confirmation. Trevor had flown to St. Louis the same night Hale was attacked. The next morning, Layla marched back into court, notebook in hand, and presented her findings. The courtroom erupted. Judge Reiner called for a 2-hour recess to review the Reiner evidence. Social media exploded. Hashtags trended. Number Justice for Logan. Number Layla the Defender. Number Who is Trevor Maddox? When court resumed, the judge delivered a bombshell ruling. "This court has serious concerns about the integrity of the state's case," he he said. I am ordering the immediate release of Mr. Carter on bond. Furthermore, I am requesting a formal investigation into Mr. Trevor Maddox. The courtroom exploded in applause. Layla stood on the bench to see above the crowd, her notebook clutched to her chest like a shield of truth. Logan walked straight to her, knelt down, and whispered, "You saved me." Layla shook her head, eyes shining. "You saved Marcus. I just did my part." A week later, Trevor Maddox was arrested. Digital evidence linked him to Victor Hale and the Cap warehouse. The frame-up had collapsed. Logan Carter's name was cleared. But what mattered most to Logan wasn't the cleared charges, or the stock rebound, or the headlines that now hailed him as a victim. It was dinner at a small apartment in East St. Louis, sharing fried chicken with Layla and her grandmother. It was the moment he realized that the girl who saved him wasn't just brave. She was brilliant. "You'd make a great lawyer," he said. Layla grinned. "Then stay out of trouble, Mr. Carter. I charge double next time." And they laughed, not the laugh of a billionaire or a newsworthy prodigy, just a man and a girl who believed in each other when no one else would. This story wasn't just about guilt or innocence. It was about belief, about a girl who refused to stay quiet, and a man who learned what real loyalty looked like. And it was proof that sometimes the most powerful defender in the room is the one everyone overlooks. They thought she was just a little girl. They thought she'd be ignored, escorted out maybe, even laughed at. But what no one in that courtroom expected, what not even Logan Carter himself could have foreseen, was that 8-year-old Layla Thompson would become the one voice that saved his life. By the time she stood up and said, "I can defend him," Logan had already lost everything. His name, his business, his freedom. Once hailed as a genius tech founder and hailed for his mentorship platform Bridgepoint, Logan had built a billion-dollar company on the foundation of second chances, giving kids from underprivileged backgrounds access to mentors, laptops, and career pathways. But now he sat in handcuffs, abandoned by his lawyer, accused of a brutal assault against his business rival, Victor Hale. The evidence looked airtight, phone data placing him near a burning warehouse, a rental car caught on camera, and even a stash of untraceable cash in his office. To the public, Logan Carter had become a cautionary tale, but not to Layla. She sat in the third row, braids swaying, wearing a second-hand dress and sneakers too big for her feet. No one noticed her at first. She had spent weeks preparing, skipping school, reading every article about Logan's case at the library, printing out records, and highlighting timelines. She wasn't a lawyer. She was a child. But she believed something everyone else had forgotten, that the truth is louder than power. And Logan had once helped her brother, Marcus. Marcus had joined Bridgepoint during the pandemic. They had no internet at home, no devices, nothing. But Logan's program had given Marcus a laptop, free Wi-Fi, and a mentor. He wanted to be a software developer, to change his life. And for a moment, it seemed possible. Until Marcus was shot outside a convenience store by a stray bullet before he ever got to finish the program. Layla never forgot what Logan gave them. And she wasn't going to let the one man who believed in her brother be destroyed by lies. So when Logan's attorney quit mid-trial, claiming his client wasn't honest, and the courtroom descended into murmurs and confusion, Layla stood up. Her voice cracked, but she spoke clearly. "I can defend him." At first, the judge and crowd were stunned. The camera zoomed in. One reporter whispered, "Is this real?" And yet, instead of being silenced, Layla was given 1 minute to speak. She used it well. With trembling hands but fierce determination, she opened her notebook. Mr. Carter couldn't have been at that warehouse. His flight from Los Angeles didn't land until after midnight. And that warehouse is over 2 hours away. She flipped the page. Also, why would he do it? Victor Hale's company was losing a contract to Bridgepoint. If Mr. Carter went to jail, Hale would get the deal back. The courtroom fell silent. Even Logan turned, eyes wide, stunned that someone, anyone, was finally putting the pieces together. Later that day, as Layla sat in a holding room awaiting her grandmother, Logan was escorted in by deputies. Still cuffed, still overwhelmed. "You," he whispered. "Why would you do that?" Layla looked up and shrugged. "Because you didn't do it. And because nobody else was going to say it." They talked briefly. And in that moment, something shifted in Logan. The despair that had hardened into numbness cracked open. For the first time in weeks, he felt hope. But that hope was tested fast when Trevor Maddox walked into the jail the next night. Trevor was Logan's former best friend and business partner. They had started Bridgepoint together in college. But 2 years earlier, Trevor had been forced out after a failed lawsuit and bitter fallout. Now, he was back, with a confession that sent chills down Logan's spine. "You didn't fall by accident," Trevor said with a smirk. "I set it all up. The phone data? Cloned. The cash? A gift. Hale wanted you gone. I wanted revenge. We made a deal." Logan sat frozen. His best friend had destroyed him. Not for money, but for spite. But Trevor had miscalculated one thing. Layla. That night, Layla reviewed her notebook again and saw Trevor's name. It had popped up in an old Bridgepoint press release. Curious, she cross-referenced it with recent data and found a flight Trevor took to St. Louis the day of the attack on Victor Hale. The next morning, she returned to court. "Just one more thing," she pleaded. "Please let me show you." Judge Reiner gave her 30 seconds. She handed over the evidence, a printed plane ticket, time-stamped, with Trevor's name. He was there, not Mr. Carter. The courtroom erupted. Reiner called a 2-hour recess and ordered a full investigation. When court resumed, the decision was swift and stunning. Logan was released, and Trevor Maddox was named a person of interest in a formal inquiry. Outside, reporters swarmed the steps, but Logan didn't care about headlines anymore. He turned to Layla, now standing on a bench just to see over the crowd. "You saved me," he said, voice shaking. She smiled. "Number. You saved Marcus. I just finished the job." 1 week later, Trevor was arrested. Evidence linked him to the frame-up. The story went viral again. But this time, not about guilt. It was about courage. About a little girl with braids and a voice no one expected. Logan returned to East St. Louis not as a billionaire, not as a victim, but as a man who understood the cost of silence and the value of loyalty. He sat at Layla's tiny kitchen table with her and her grandmother, eating fried chicken and laughing about how she charged double next time. And when someone later asked him what turned the tide, Logan didn't hesitate. It wasn't a legal strategy. It wasn't a miracle, he said. It was a kid who refused to be quiet, because sometimes the loudest truth comes from the smallest voice. The story didn't end in the courtroom. It started there. Because what 8-year-old Layla Thompson did that day wasn't just defend a man accused of attempted murder. She ignited something much bigger. A ripple that would lead to truth, justice, and a conversation the world had been avoiding for far too long. Logan Carter, once hailed as a tech visionary and champion for underserved youth, had been branded a criminal overnight. He wasn't born rich. He had built Bridgepoint, a digital platform connecting low-income students with mentorships, technology, and scholarships, because he knew what it was like to have nothing. During the pandemic, when schools closed and the digital divide became more obvious than ever, Logan stepped in. His company distributed thousands of tablets, funded internet access, and created real hope in places the system had forgotten. But one night in St. Louis changed everything. A warehouse fire. A man found beaten, Victor Hale, Logan's biggest corporate rival. A traffic Cam. A phone ping. A safe full of cash. The headlines came fast. Billionaire beats competitor. In business feud. Sponsors fled. Stock plummeted. Even Logan's lawyer began to doubt him. And that's when Layla stood up. She wasn't a lawyer. She was a child. But she carried something no one else had dared to bring into that courtroom. Belief. Her brother, Marcus, had once been part of Bridgepoint's coding mentorship program. Living in East St. Louis, their family had struggled with basic needs. But Logan's program gave Marcus hope, opportunity, and access to a future. He had plans. College, coding, escape. But a year before the trial, Marcus was killed in a shooting near a convenience store. Layla was devastated, but she never blamed Logan. She saw him as the only person who had ever seen Marcus as more than just another name in a statistic. So when Logan was accused, Layla didn't hesitate. She started reading. She studied articles in the library, printed timelines, collected details. And when the lawyer quit mid-trial, calling Logan dishonest, Layla stood up and said, "I can defend him." What followed was extraordinary. Given 1 minute by Judge Reiner, Layla laid out flight records, timestamps, and logic. She pointed out that Logan's plane landed after midnight, while the warehouse incident occurred hours earlier. She highlighted how Victor Hale had every reason to see Logan fall. His company stood to gain millions. And she said it all with the calm authority of someone who wasn't trying to win a case. She was trying to save someone's life. The courtroom listened. America listened. But what no one knew then was that Layla's courage would unravel a deeper conspiracy. That same night, Logan received a surprise visitor in jail, Trevor Maddox, his former best friend and co-founder of Bridgepoint. They hadn't spoken in 2 years, but now Trevor was there, smug and quiet, delivering a truth that made Logan's blood run cold. "It wasn't luck that brought you down," Trevor said. "It was me." Trevor had cloned Logan's phone, planted cash, coordinated with Hale, and orchestrated the Planks phone takedown. Why? Revenge. He felt abandoned, overshadowed, and unwanted. But he hadn't counted on Layla. Back in her apartment, Layla kept reviewing her notes. One name kept standing out, Trevor Maddox. She remembered it from an old article, then cross-referenced it with a plane ticket. The result was stunning. Trevor had flown to St. Louis on the day of the attack. She circled it, printed it, and marched back into court the next morning. The judge gave her 30 seconds. She showed the printout. Trevor Maddox flew there. He had the motive. He had the access. The courtroom gasped. The judge called a recess. Reporters scrambled. And 2 hours later, Judge Reiner ordered Logan Carter released on bond and announced a formal investigation into Trevor Maddox. But the story didn't fade there. What Layla did was more than crack a case. She exposed something deeper. How quickly society turns on those it once praised, and how little it takes to destroy someone's life, especially if they come from humble beginnings, no matter how far they rise. Logan was cleared within a week. Trevor Maddox was arrested. The truth came out. Victor Hale had faked the attack in exchange for a massive settlement. Trevor had coordinated it all. But Layla didn't celebrate with press tours or fame. She went home, back to her small apartment with peeling paint and a television that barely worked. She didn't need cameras to feel proud. She just needed to know Marcus would have been proud too. Logan visited her 1 week later, this time not as a defendant, but as a friend. They sat at her kitchen table with her grandmother, eating fried chicken and laughing about the headlines. "You should be charging me for this," Logan joked. Layla grinned. "Next time." "I will." Then she got serious. "Do you think Marcus mattered?" she asked. Logan looked at her. "He mattered to me. He still does." She nodded. "Good. Because now the world knows he wasn't just a number. He was someone worth fighting for." That night, Logan made a decision to start the Marcus Initiative, a scholarship and mentorship foundation in Marcus's name, focused on helping kids like him navigate the world with tools, confidence, and dignity. And the first advisor he hired? Layla Thompson. She might have only been 8, but she had done something most adults would never dare. She had stood up for the truth when no one else would. She had defended not just a man, but a legacy. Because sometimes justice doesn't wear a robe. Sometimes it wears sneakers and carries a notebook full of scribbled facts. And sometimes the person who changes everything isn't the one with the loudest voice, but the one with the most courage. They thought she was just a little girl with no voice, no power, and no right to speak in a courtroom. But when 8-year-old Layla Thompson stood up, clutching her notebook, and said, "I can defend him," the entire world stopped to listen. In a trial stacked with lies, silence, and betrayal, it wasn't a billionaire's legal team that turned the tide. It was the unwavering truth of a child who had nothing to gain except honoring her brother's memory. Layla's voice cracked through a courtroom of cynics, not with legal jargon, but with raw clarity, flight times, motives, facts, and above all, belief. She believed in Logan Carter's innocence when no one else did. And because of that belief, the truth came to light. A frame-up was exposed, and justice was served. She didn't have a degree. She didn't have power. But she had the one thing no one else dared bring: conviction rooted in love. Sometimes, the world won't believe you. They'll call you too young, too poor, too small. But never underestimate the strength of a heart that's fighting for the truth. Layla taught us that even the smallest voice, when powered by love and courage, can shake the walls of injustice. If you were Layla, would you have stood up? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true, powerful stories that restore faith in what's right. Because sometimes, the smallest defender holds the greatest truth.